Hello, this is our October 11th meeting, 2011, of the East Multnomah County League of Women Voters. And rather than have ballot measures this time, because there simply weren't any ballot measures to speak of, we're having a guest speaker from TriMet talking about services in East Multnomah County. I'd like to introduce to you this morning Olivia Clark.
Well, thanks everybody. I really appreciate being invited here, back here to meet with you on this kind of gray day. I am Olivia Clark. I'm the Executive Director of Government Affairs at TriMet. I've been at TriMet about 9 years. I can't believe where's the time gone. I came to TriMet from having worked for Governor Kitzhaber 1.0 the last time, and have really enjoyed my time at TriMet. It's been action-packed. What I'd like to do today is just make some very informal remarks to you and then ask questions. Hopefully we can have a little give and take here. It's kind of what I had thought was going to happen. But let me just back up and share a little bit about TriMet with you. And by the way, I am a league member. I'm a league member in the Portland area. I'm very appreciative of everything that you do to gather information, to do studies, to make information public for people to make up their mind on issues. It's a great service, and I look forward to spending more time in my own league chapter. You may have seen that it wasn't that long ago that we celebrated the 25-year anniversary of the MAX Blue Line coming to Gresham. And in fact, maybe Kit or someone can help me hand out, I brought the insert that was in one of the newspapers there that talks about the history of the Blue Line, opened up in 1986. I have to tell you a little personal story. I was living in Salem at that time. And my friend and I decided that we read about this light rail thing was going to open up in the Portland metropolitan area, and we thought, well, let's go up there for the opening day, and it was just very, very, very exciting. So we drove up to Portland and hopped on one of the light rail lines that opening day. I had never been to Gresham before. This was 25 years ago. I had never been here, and at that time, the light rail brought us out. You know, there were balloons and happiness and cookies and everything. Brought us out to a vacant lot and kind of dropped us off. I'm like, oh my goodness, where am I? Because so much had not really been developed in Gresham yet on this part of town. But there was a tremendous amount of excitement in the region and for Gresham. And I think that we've really grown the system from that original 15, 18 miles now to 52 miles of light rail throughout the region. And every time TriMet adds something to the system, it creates a real synergy with the light rail on this side of town. Anyway, that celebration was very recent, and you can read about it in the handout there. Very exciting time. And that's not the only thing that TriMet's been doing out in this part of the region in East Multnomah County and Gresham. You know, in 2010, we opened up the new civic station. That had been planned on the books for a long time, but really was contingent on adequate development to ensure the ridership at that station. So that opened this last year in 2010. Then we joined with the City of Gresham to reconstruct the Rockwood station. If you ever ride, you'll know that now that it's got a big, beautiful station with art that was selected by a local committee. It's terrific. The City of Gresham and TriMet partnered to apply for some state money, and then the City of Gresham used some urban renewal funds to realign the roads there at that stop and to make it a much nicer station. I think we've really raised the bar now. We need to go back 25 years later and rehabilitate all of these stations when we can afford to. But in the meantime, what TriMet did was when the Congress passed the Recovery Act a couple of years ago, TriMet actually was a beneficiary of some of those dollars and invested it in some of the light rail stations along the east side. We repainted them. We put in security cameras. We improved some of the crosswalks. I don't know if you've noticed that. it paid for the access control at the station nearby here, the Gresham Central, and made other improvements. But that's just on the light rail side, and there's lots more to go. We recently put together a little tour for some of the elected officials in Gresham and East Multnomah County and Metro to ride out here and talk about maybe it's time to renew the blue line. It's 25 years old. It's a little tired. We would never have built those stations today the way they were built 25 years ago. Lots of standards have changed. So we took a group out and we looked at that and we asked some of the elected officials if we could find some dollars to do that. Would you be willing to match dollars so that we could really bring the light rail up to more current standards, like the Rockwood station? If you have a chance, check that station out. It's beautiful. You just feel safe there. Feel really good. We've also made other bus improvements and changes in East Multnomah County in the last couple of years. I'll just list off a couple of them. If any of you ride those buses, you know that we extended line 8081 out to Glenado Park. It was really at the request of, I think, the city of Troutdale, actually. Line 77 was extended to the Columbia Gorge outlets. There have been lots of changes on the line 12. That's a really heavily used bus line that goes out Sandy Boulevard, comes out this way. And I think there are a few other changes like that. So there's been a lot of activity, both on the light rail side and on the bus side. In talking to you today, if there's one thing that I want you to really think about and convey to you today and think about when you leave is that if you read the newspaper, you know that not only are we in a recession, still in a recession, we call it the Great Recession at TriMet. We lost about 10 years. We're back to employment levels back to 1998. But we're watching what's going on in Congress and watching the economy, and we feel like we're on the verge of dismantling our transportation system and our transit system. And I'll explain what I mean a little more detail. I also handed out some other material to you that has some statistics from across the country. We're not alone in what's going on here at TriMet with looking at service cuts post-recession. The American Public Transit Association did a survey. I've given you some of the stats that came out of that. But across the country, transit agencies have been, about 71% of transit agencies have been cutting service across the U.S. And this last year, somewhere around 58% have increased fares. And that's probably something that you watch TriMet do. TriMet's taken a very incremental approach over time to increase fares to keep up with inflation. But across the country, because of the Great Recession, service is being cut all over the United States, and we're no exception. So, and I brought a little chart here. I'll just hold it up here for a second that just shows that post-recession job growth is very low. And it just shows you over time what's been going on with the economy by looking at job growth in our larger metropolitan area. And it's important that you know about this because TriMet, unlike most transit agencies across the country, we don't fund transit on a sales tax like most states and most transit agencies across the country. TriMet, 50% of TriMet's budget comes from a payroll tax, and payroll tax is really contingent on employment. Just like the state budget is heavily dependent on income tax, when the economy went down the tubes here, this last Great Recession, our payroll tax reduced significantly. So TriMet, out of I'm going to be rough, $450 million general fund budget, cut about $60 million. And probably 120 to 140 positions. And we've had to cut service across the region. It's something like 10% of the MAX service has been cut, hours, and about 14% on bus across the region. So until this turns around, we're going to be facing some pretty tough times in this region. And you know that from talking to your neighbors. I mean, it's not just TriMet. It's every government, it's businesses closing, it's people being unemployed. These are really, really difficult times, and TriMet has felt it like everyone else. I'll leave this here if anybody wants to look at it. So we've cut the budget, we've cut positions, we've cut service. We have a very lean operation, and I suspect that given what's coming at us, we're going to be cutting more. And I don't know where that will take place or exactly how, but we're just beginning to put together the budget for the next year, 2013. And there are a lot of budget uncertainties that are going to come home to roost here, not just the economy, but we're in negotiations with our labor union over salary and health care benefits. That's something that you've seen in the newspaper at the state level. It's happening everywhere. We're in those negotiations. We also have an aging demographic, the baby boomers, which is going to put a different kind of stress on the TriMet system. We've seen the lift growth exponentially. That's the rides that TriMet provides with the little van, little buses for folks who cannot ride the system or cannot get to places that they need to go without assistance. That's federally mandated, and that's something that TriMet provides. That's changing. Energy prices are unstable. We are the biggest user of diesel fuel in the state of Oregon, about 6 million gallons a year. So you can imagine when the price goes up, that has a huge impact on TriMet. So I don't want to bum you out here today, but there are a lot of trends and things that are going to affect what TriMet can and can't do. I neglected to tell you the really good news. I should have started with the good news. Sorry, I'll cheer you up now. TriMet really has a great system. We are the 24th largest metropolitan region in the United States. Generally, that's from over here to way over there in Hillsborough and down to the edge of Wilsonville and along the Columbia. It's a big region. We're the 24th largest. We have the 7th highest per capita transit ridership in the United States, which is phenomenal. It tells you a variety of things. We have great service coverage. It may not be what everybody wants, but when you stack us up against other transit agencies across the country, we're pretty darn good. 7th highest per capita. There's really, if you look at the rides per day, it's about roughly 330,000 rides per day. That's a city. We're carrying a city all around the region of people, and it's complex like a city. Lots of things going on. It's about 100 million rides a year. And what's interesting is, despite the cuts, despite things, ridership is still growing faster than population growth and vehicle miles traveled, the miles that people drive. It's pretty remarkable. But the Great Recession has definitely taken its toll on TriMet and lots of other public services. You probably know from reading the newspaper and talking to folks, we have a new general manager. He's not that new anymore. He's been here in July. It was a year. And he's been out and about. His name is Neil McFarland. He was the head of capital projects at TriMet for maybe 20 years. He built most of the MAX lines, helped build the convention center. He's now the general manager. And since he took over that position, he's been out and about listening, having meetings with businesses, groups of people. We've been out to Gresham several times and try to invite a cross-section of people just for him to listen to people's perceptions about TriMet, what they're thinking, what he needs to pay attention to. And he's developed really kind of a 5-year plan for TriMet now, given this environment. And let me just tell you, before I tell you what's in the 5-year plan, one of the things that he heard and that he responded to was that people are very concerned that folks are not paying. They're not paying for the ride. You don't see fare inspectors very often if you ride the MAX. It's a different situation on the bus because you have to, pay or give your ticket to the bus driver, your money. So it's a different situation on MAX. It's an honor system, and a lot of people are really worried that folks are not paying, and there's fare evasion. So after hearing that around the region, he moved some things around inside of TriMet and hired half a dozen or 7 fare inspectors. And if you don't think that's made an impression, let me just share this with you. Those folks, and they're very strategic in where they go. They use statistics on and offs, crime, all kinds of information to determine where they place these people around the system. And the number of, well, his theme was from education to enforcement. We've had 25 years to learn how to pay on the system. Everybody needs to be paying. So no more Mr. Nice Guy. So these folks and also the participation of the police, the transit police, local police officers throughout the region have made the citations, which is a fine or a ticket basically, if you're not paying, have increased 5-fold. Amazing. I can give you the exact numbers if you're interested, but
sure. I just want to mention the fact that they don't take our money. I don't know if they just look at me and know how poor I am, but a lot of times they won't take the money. And I have one of those things that they just punch on, you know.
They don't take your money at the ticket machine or where?
No, I have the thing that you just punch, that they're supposed to just punch.
For a Lyft ride?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's it. Let's you and I talk about that
Okay.
afterwards, and I'll get some more information from you. I appreciate that. In any event, I just want to make the point that he's been out and about, he's heard what people are thinking, and he acted, and it's had a remarkable impact on the system. A lot of people down at the Multnomah County Courthouse trying to fight that, which is kind of interesting, because it's not cheap to get a ticket on TriMet. You're better off getting a ticket than risking getting a $170 citation. Anyway, just a sidebar there. Let me back up. So the 5-year plan is basically focused in 3 areas. And if I had to put a moniker on it, I would say that it's really kind of back to basics. Number 1 is customer service, making sure that the customer is number 1. That means safety, security. That means a lot of different things. It also means that we're going to start looking at fare policy. We have a very arcane system of zones, which is very confusing for me, for bus drivers, for everybody. We're going to start looking at how do you simplify that system. We're kind of behind the rest of the country on that one. And that will gradually, hopefully, migrate into a different kind of fare system, whether it's electronic. If you've ever been to, Washington, D.C. or some other big city, they have electronic. They have like little strips, magnetic strips that you have to go through. In a closed system, that's really easy. We'll have to come up with some sort of a hybrid. But we're looking at migrating to a different kind of a fare system and simplifying the fare system. So lots of items under customer service. The second one is financial stability, and I've talked a little bit about that. Depending on where the economy goes, where our labor contract goes, where energy prices go, we could be looking at cutting more service. But he's also challenged everyone in TriMet. Can we look at doing things differently? Are there things that we can just stop doing that we're doing now? Personally, I think we're pretty cut to the bone right now. But if we have to cut, there are only really 3 places to go for revenue, and that's you increase the fares, or you cut the service, or you cut something else. And frankly, there isn't much more to cut. That's my opinion. The third element of his 5-year plan is to build partnerships. And the only way that TriMet has grown the way it has and has the MAX system that it has is because we have partners throughout the region, whether it's the city of Gresham, Multnomah County, Metro, Washington County. All of the lines that have been built have been partners stepping up and providing some of those resources or providing the political will to get something like that built or done. And TriMet operates in an environment that we don't control. We don't control the streets. We don't control the sidewalks. We would like to work with our partners, build more partnerships around building sidewalks at transit stops so that people can actually use them and get there. It's an access issue. We have 7,000 transit stops in the region, believe it or not. That's a lot. And we did a study of all of those transit stops. We narrowed it down to about 600 to really look at where that are heavily used, narrowed that down using a variety of criteria, and came up with a pedestrian network analysis that shows where we should make sidewalk improvements throughout the region on the heavily used lines, maybe near a senior center, maybe near a grocery store, where there's a lot of use. We're just putting the finishing touches on that. and we will take that around to all of the folks who do control the sidewalks and see if we can't work together to make some sidewalk investments where it would make a difference in getting access to the bus or access to the MAX. Mostly it's access to bus. We really need to encourage people to walk. I think that's a high value in our society, or growing value. And if there aren't sidewalks or safe sidewalks, people aren't going to want to walk. And almost everybody who gets on the bus is a pedestrian first. So we're hoping to build more partnerships around those kinds of investments that would really bring a twofer or a threefer, both to TriMet as well as the community. With that, I think I probably talked long enough. I'm about to lose my voice. So why don't I stop there and answer any questions that you might have about TriMet, anything that you're curious about, if I'll do the best I can. And if I can't answer your question, I'm happy to get the information back to you. So, yes.
We've been reading in the news about student passes to go to classes, to go to school, and that has been discontinued. Is that correct? And how do the kids get to school?
That's a great question. Thank you. TriMet does have a student fare. It's a much reduced fare, just as we have an honored citizen fare, knowing that not every kid can get to school very easily. So there is a student fare. But I guess about 2 years ago, the Multnomah County Youth Commission came to TriMet and to City Hall and to the county commissioners. They went everywhere, and they asked for TriMet and the Portland Public Schools and the city to go to the state to apply for what's called a business energy tax credit to help fund student passes, but only really for the Portland Public Schools. You probably know Portland Public Schools don't have yellow buses for high school kids. There's no, and that was some sort of deal that must have been worked out a long time ago in the school funding formula. Some sort of trade-off was made. I guess the presumption also being that there was a bus system that they could use. So in any event, based on the hard work of the Multnomah County Youth Commission, TriMet joined with Portland Public Schools in the city of Portland and applied for this tax credit to help pay for free passes for high school students. We got the tax credit. We instituted the program, and then the legislature decided, because of their budget problems, that they were going to take a very close look at all tax credits, the value of those tax credits, what it was costing, and hold it up against other services that the state deems important. And they made a decision to radically change the business energy tax credit. No longer are student passes eligible for the business energy tax credit. So the way it works right now is that there was enough money to provide Portland Public School high school students with free passes up until the end of this year. And then the rest of the school year, before there was the business energy tax credit, by the way, the Portland Public Schools was offering passes to kids who are on free and reduced lunch. So they were doing that. They were putting it probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $800,000 into that program. And they just rolled that into the overall package when we got the business energy tax credit. Now that we don't have that, they're going to go back. It's up to the Portland Public Schools to decide, do they want to continue to put, after January when the pass program expires, do they want to go back to the free and reduced lunch program? They're still working on that. And I think others that are concerned about this are trying to find resources to do that. So I think we may end up with just a free and reduced lunch, kids getting free passes. I don't know. But you know, it's not cheap, and it's a budget decision. And when you're looking at cutting service, this is something that the TriMet board is going to have to confront again next year, is if this is all you have, here are your choices. Where do you cut? What do you do? You know, lots of people would like free service or free passes for whomever. Well, where do you find the resource to do that? You have to cut something on the ledger. So those are really tough choices that are coming up. I hope I answered your question, probably a little bit long-winded.
I rode the trolley. I mean, we even had trolleys downtown. But do they still have the same? So if you go from one bus to the other, that you have a different
transfer? Yeah.
Yeah, we still do that.
Yeah, that's kind of 19th century technology. That little flimsy piece of paper.
But there's nothing out here, and we've been out here since '49.
Well, someday we're, as I said earlier, we're going to look at fare policy, simplifying it, and seeing if we can do away with those silly little transfers, and people instead have a card that they tap somewhere electronically that can deduct the cost or however it will work from their fare. Well, I go to Washington D.C. every now and then, and I have a smart card from their system, and I use that whenever I'm there, and then I can it takes money off. And boy, they have different prices at different times of day too. They have peak hour. You want to ride at 9 o'clock, or it's going to cost you double or whatever. So, and then you can reload money on that card. That's something that we're looking at: is how can we really upgrade our system? And I think, frankly, that may also get at fare evasion too.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I'm glad to hear they're doing something with the fares, because there's so many people that flaunt the fact that they never pay, and that's terrible. But also, how is TriMet addressing the security issue with the amount of attacks and everything that's going on with that?
Well, first of all, let me back up and just tell you that we have a transit police department, and TriMet contracts with all of our partners. So the city of Gresham, for example, TriMet pays to have a certain number of officers be in the transit police division. And at the same time, Gresham may make the decision also to provide additional patrol on at the light rail stations or whatever. But we have a transit police division. It's getting close to 60 people throughout the region. They're paid for by TriMet. They come from everywhere: Tigard, Hillsborough, City of Portland, Gresham. And they have a central command. They make decisions on how they ride the system. I don't know if you remember back, was it 4 years now, when Mr. Chilcolt was beaten by the young man, the 15 or 16-year-old kid. At that point, we sat down with Gresham and actually the entire region's law enforcement community and said, we have to do something different. If we're going to continue to pay the police, we need to have a certain number of hours. You can't patrol from the car. You have to get on the train. We started making those kinds of changes. So there's more visibility. There's more enforcement. It has been more effective. I don't think I have the crime stats. I have station by station. I can talk to you afterwards if you'd like to see what's happening station by station on the MAX. But definitely crime is down. It's much better than it used to be. But we have to remain vigilant. And there's been some interest in East Multnomah County in a citizens patrol. I don't know if you've heard about that, Adopt a Stop. There are some people in East Portland and out this way that would like to have volunteer patrols. Not like, what were the angels in Los Angeles, the guardian angels? Not like that. No vigilantes, please. But people who are actually trained. It's really kind of an expansion of Neighborhood Watch. So if you have a MAX station in your neighborhood and you're interested, that you get trained to actually keep your eyes on the station and report things to the police. But I think things are much better than they were 4 years ago.
I wanted to update you maybe about a lady that had gotten assaulted here at the Gresham Station not too long ago. She lives in our mobile home park, and I thought you might want to know that she's celebrating because she can actually walk to the mailbox and get her mail now. So she was very injured, quite like that. And it wasn't anything, I don't think, and even she said that TriMet could have done anything about. This was a kind of a deranged person, and that can happen anywhere in the public. And so I don't think that she has any kind of problem with that, but she is doing a lot better.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for sharing that. I know you read about it in the paper all the time about people with mental health needs being out and about and riding the system or just being everywhere. It's very sad. People who need services and need attention.
Well, I've got to say, I've ridden the MAX quite a bit, and I have only seen security twice in all the times that we've been. But there's so many young people that really intimidate older people, and there's just no help, and it's scary. And a lot of us just aren't riding all that much anymore. Mm-hmm. And something has got to change because it's really scary. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I understand what you're saying. I know there are sometimes I come in late at night from the airport and ride downtown, and then my husband will pick me up in downtown Portland when I ride in. So I know what you're talking about. A lot of it, it's not criminal behavior. It's intimidating or other kinds of behavior or obnoxious behavior, which, we finally got an ordinance passed for loud noise or loud speaking as being unsafe or being able to write a ticket for. But there are a lot of these behaviors that are not criminal, that you can't enforce necessarily some sort of code around what they look like or how they talk or if they walk down the aisle and scare you. It's hard you can't use the police to stop that kind of thing. I guess in the best of all possible worlds, we would have the resources to have security on every car at every hour, but we don't. I mean, that would be very, very expensive. But I completely understand what you're saying about intimidation, and I know I'm aware of that.
Where are the cameras?
I'm not supposed to tell. I think
what I'm saying is why I ask that is because a lot of things are being looked at, but we don't, as riders, know that.
Well, I would say 93% of the trains and stations have cameras. Actually, I think all the trains do. 93% of the stations have cameras. And they've been very, very valuable. I don't know to what degree they really serve as a deterrent. I've never seen a study around that, but I do know that the police use them, and they use them with success. Terrific. Did they find the perpetrator?
I believe they did.
Oh, good. Yeah, they're very useful. That lighting, what I was saying earlier about the blue line in out this way in Gresham, those little stations they look like little bunkers to me, and we need to replace those over time because you can hide in them, and it's not, since this line was built, there's been something developed called the Subhead Principles, and it's something about community policing, visual something or other, that now you want to build things where you have an open line of sight and people can't hide. If you look at the Rockwood station, you'll see that's the future. That's the kind of station that we need, where you really feel safe being there because it's totally out in the open. It's very well lit. It feels very good. It's expansive. And we need to just go one by one and go after the stations on this site to change those little brick buildings, to put in more glass or something clear.
That's pretty wild art they have there too.
Yeah. Oh, at the Rockwood? Oh yeah, right. There are different opinions about that. Apparently somebody said you can see it from outer space, right?
It's horrible. It's growing up, yeah.
I think you're like most people. I think most people are like, what is this? And now they kind of like it. Yeah.
Do you think that since the crackdown on payments, to ride the line, the nuisance level will go down to, as far as, a lot of these kids, I think, get on the max for a new experience or a different experience and cause others problems. But if they had to pay, perhaps they would take it down the street.
I'd like to think so. I don't know that I have any numbers on nuisance behavior.
But have you seen any reduction in complaints?
That's a good. I don't have an answer for that. I'd have to go back and look. I don't know if the citizen complaints are down.
Can you go to the driver? I mean, I've never tried doing it if you're feeling intimidated.
If there's a real emergency, yeah. You can. There's a way to contact the operator. But it has to, I think, most people don't do that unless there's really a threat. I know there are some incidences where people have tried to take the law into their own hands. You just don't do that. You call 911. And actually, TriMet's calls are prioritized. That's the best thing to do, is to don't fight. Just, stay away from people. I mean, it's all that kind of neighborhood watch stuff that we learn, especially as women, how to be safe. But I dial 911 if you really think you're being threatened.
Is there anything on the drawing board for, as far as TriMet goes, or as far as the master plan goes, to expand the Gresham stop out to Multnomah Community College?
Well, it's a popular topic. There are, every now and then folks ask about it, and we've actually taken a look at 2 different ways to do it. We haven't costed it out or anything like that, but I would love to see it get to Mount Hood Community College. Mount Hood Community College is really a jewel in the rough. It would be great, because we're connecting other educational institutions on the entire system. Portland Community College just built a facility on the light rail in Washington County. Oh my goodness, ridership, students, happiness, it's amazing. So if we could connect, that would be great. But there has to be a groundswell for it. There has to be support for it. And you have to realize, too, that in our region, the way we've built the light rail system is everybody takes turns. We didn't do it overnight. It's been very incremental, very steady with our partners. Metro has put together a high-capacity transit plan. I think that the extension is in there somewhere. I don't know where it ranks against other priorities. But the next big things, I think, in light rail, if we're going to build any more, is the Portland-Milwaukee line, which we're already building the bridge over the Willamette River right now. That's been on the books for 25 years. That's being built. And then in the queue, in the region, people are starting to talk about the next big high-capacity transit project out Barber Boulevard to Tigard and Sherwood, out that way, because they don't have anything. Whether it would be light rail, I don't know. That's a whole study that they do with the citizens and so forth. And then, Forest Grove would like to have the light rail extended out to Forest Grove. People are talking about the Columbia River crossing, having light rail over to Vancouver. That's on the drawing board. So where Mount Hood Community College fits in all that, you have to really build a lot of support. And I've always thought, stop me if I'm talking too much, just interrupt me. But I've always thought that Mount Hood Community College, if the economy were better, you might be able to work with the private sector to redevelop some of that land out there, and have a private sector partner help finance the extension, so that we have some other dollars in it. But people have definitely talked about it, and there's kind of an undercurrent. Dr. Ski, he's gone, right? Yeah, he liked it. I know you have a Metro counselor who's kind of likes it, Shirley Craddock. I think she used to be on the city council, right? She's interested in it, but you really have to get a groundswell of support going and get in the queue in the region. Do all your due diligence. A lot of work goes into understanding what would the ridership be like. Is it a worthy investment? Et cetera, et cetera. Just because we think it's cool doesn't mean it would happen.
Yeah, I just want to admit, Lorraine, I have a daughter that lives right downtown on Broadway, and she's been riding it for quite a while. But she has, she brings out her laundry and so forth, and she always has so much that she brings out. And that's another thing that she observed, that they are not very kind to those persons who have packages and so forth.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting point. There's increasing competition for space on the MAX. There's competition between the bicyclists and young mothers with strollers and multiple kids, and people in electronic scooters like yourself who are in there trying to get room. It's a very dynamic process, and some cities have completely outlawed bicycles on their light rail. I don't think we're going to head in that direction. I don't think that would work here. We've taken a different tact, but yeah, the stroller, everything's getting bigger. It seems like. Have you noticed the strollers are like Mercedes? Lorraine, yeah.
Are there any other developments with Boring and the transit line out there?
Yeah, I was talking to Marlene about this earlier. Under Oregon law, there is a very prescribed process that you have to go through if you want to end service in your area, get out of the TriMet region. So they collected the signatures. The signatures were verified by the Clackamas County clerk. They had an adequate number. They were valid. And so that then launches a process whereby a study is done for the TriMet board of, what's the service, how many people are using it, how many people are using the lift service in that area. I think guide dogs for the blind are located out there, which will be a factor. So they put a report together, and then that will go to the TriMet board, and they'll have public hearings around it, and then they'll make a decision. But it's a very prescribed process. I think it would probably be, I am just guessing it's going to be resolved by December. We'll know. Because if you're going to change the TriMet Code, you have to have 2 public hearings, and it takes 30 days. You know what the public process is. So I can't tell you any facts about it.
Does it go to the guide dogs for the blind?
I don't know if the bus does. I think there are Lyft riders that.
No, I hadn't heard of it going there.
No, I think it's mostly Lyft. They get served by Lyft, but there are other facilities out there that I think are served by Lyft. We talked a little bit about Lyft, which is the paratransit for people with disabilities, which is a federally mandated program, by the way. And the federal law is that if you have a fixed route bus line, I'm not going to be able to give you exactly what the law says, but then you have to provide the Lyft service that concomitant with that within a certain distance and certain times of that bus line. Now, TriMet goes beyond the federal law. They go farther, they go out farther, and they go door to door. The federal law only requires curb-to-curb service. Over time, I think TriMet has felt that they needed to help people get from the door to the curb on the van. But the federal law does not require that. So TriMet's doing a little bit more than the federal law requires for the disabled community. But that will be a big factor, I think, in the Boring decision. I'm just guessing, Lorraine. What do those people do if there's no Lyft service out there? Yeah.
Yesterday I rode the MAX with a group of AAW ladies, and we went out to the airport and so forth. But I just want to say, to share that I was very impressed with how that's set up. I didn't realize you could just get on the MAX and go right to the airport, and basically you're there at the baggage area of the airport, and it was wonderful. And the planning and everything, I think is really great. I'd like to see it expanded, out to Sandy and Boring and all of that. But I was wondering too if in this recession, if the ridership goes up as people lose their cars or whatever else happens, if there would be kind of a balance of your revenues coming in so that you could kind of at least maintain or have some sort of plans to go. I know you've probably got all of these plans to push and grow this whole system. Would that be anything in the works as far as projecting increased revenues as times get tougher?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that. But first, just let me say I'm really glad you had a good experience on the Red Line. It often is. Yeah. People with bags too, right?
Well, it was just there were very few empty seats.
That's great. That's great to hear. What a lot of people don't know is that transportation, the roads, transit, it's all subsidized. nothing pays its whole way. And transit across the country, the average, or sort of the standard for the amount that the fares pay is about a quarter. And we're right smack dab on target. Depending on the week or the month or whatever, it's usually 23 to 27% of the fares pay for the TriMet system. And fare revenue up, it has gone up some. You're right. I don't know how elastic it really is, but fare revenue is really important to the system. That's why fare evasion is important to get after, to stop that kind of leakage. It's interesting, this is kind of off your question, but about 50% of the people who ride TriMet have passes. This, through their employer, or they buy it themselves, or their school, they get a school pass or whatever.
Yeah. That's where all my Mad Hatters and all those type, they just go to Fred Meyer.
And they get them. So you don't often see people, you don't see as many people as you might think buying tickets, because half the people have one of these, and they don't get it out of the ticket machine. They get it somewhere else. So, I think that kind of feeds the notion that people aren't buying tickets. Well, a lot of people already have a pass. But I appreciate your question. I'm glad you took the field trip out there. I'm going to tell you a funny story, and we probably need to wrap it up pretty soon. But you probably weren't here when 10 years ago when that line opened. But it was a huge event. It was a big public-private partnership that built it. Private developers, and it was way ahead of time. It was on the big list of someday we should do that, but it was sped up because the private sector wanted it. They wanted to develop some property out there, et cetera, et cetera. So it opened on September 10th, 2001, and the very next day was 9/11, and the train became incredibly important in moving people out of the. Remember that there were no flights for quite a while. It seems like at least maybe a week. No air travel. So the train was really important. But the other thing I want to say about that is that if you tried to do that today, what you really love about the fact that it almost goes into the airport, you couldn't do that today because of 9/11. You couldn't build it that way. Because of security issues. They're not going to let it get that close. So we're lucky, in that regard. But and there's a lot more security that comes with the airport line. We work very closely with TSA, Transportation Security Administration. They love TriMet. They use us all the time to go out and do training, and they work with the police, and so we get a lot of extra help, security help from them, not just out at the airport, but throughout the system.
Well, as a new resident, I was just really impressed. Sometimes when you're too close to it, you take it for granted or whatever. But I come from Los Angeles area, and we used to have the lines that went into LA back at the turn of the century and more. When the automobile came in, the powers that be politics squashed all that. So come here and see this metro line is wonderful.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. Oh, thanks. Well, it certainly put Portland and this region on the map. People come. I don't think there's a month that goes by that we don't get visitors from some other city across the country that want to know, how do we do it? How can we do it? And our experience is not really immediately transferable to them. Everybody has their own politics, their own financing, their own situation. We just happen to have a region that's very united. We work together, and we have one transit agency. A lot of places like Seattle, they have lots of little ones that have to coordinate. It makes it more difficult to do things, but we're very fortunate. We have great partnerships throughout the region with our local governments, very supportive. So we built something that's pretty unique that the rest of the country is trying to catch up with. Marlene, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to have a fun question for you.
Good. Let's hope I have an answer.
On the 180 first, second, and Hyman routes, there has been a Multnomah County help build 182nd. I am wondering, has there been an increased ridership? Has TriMet looked at that line? It doesn't seem to me that it has changed.
You said 181st? On 181st?
181st.
Or 182nd?
182nd.
Yeah. Well, interesting that you brought that up. I don't know about the ridership, but I do know that one thing I didn't mention is TriMet has a document called the Transit Investment Plan. And if we had money, it shows where the first dollars would go. And so there are bus lines throughout the region that are on that list. Some that I mentioned earlier that we would like to make more frequent or extend or whatever. And I think the 181st, there's actually two bus lines on that, one coming from the north and one coming from the south, and they kind of meet at Burnside. Ideally, if we had the resources, I think some people would like to just make that one line that was more frequent all the way up and down, north-south travel all day long. We can't afford to do that right now. I'm not answering your question because I don't know if the traffic has picked up. They're not, I think the south one is not very frequent. And I don't know if it's an hour or a half hour. It's an hour. That's bad. To get people to ride transit in our region, we're competing with the car. So you have to have a good experience to ride. I think studies show that people will ride when there's frequency. People don't want to have to, get out there right at the hour, risk missing, and they have a whole other hour. In fact, people don't like to look at schedules at all. People would like to just walk outside and know that the bus will be there in maximum 15 minutes. That's what studies show, is people are willing to wait maximum 15 minutes. But there is a transit investment plan, and I think that 181st is a desirable one for improvement, but it's going to be a while given this. And I'll leave this with you. One other thing she's coming to get me. Is it over? I'm happy to stay and answer more questions if you like. There's lots more to talk about. She's coming to get me.
I just want to say that our hour is up, and we don't want to keep our speaker too long. But if she seems very nice, and I'm sure she will answer more questions for a while. But I wanted to bring up one more thing before we close, and that was next month we will be doing the role of the federal government in public education. And if it's all right with you, I'm going to contact the Gresham-Barlow School District and see if we can get a speaker on that subject, or does anybody have any other suggestions?
Or Renewal School District.
Okay, then we will adjourn for now, and you can ask your questions some more of our wonderful speaker. Thank you so much.